Do fish ever get thirsty? It sounds like a ridiculous question. A fish is surrounded by water every second of its life. Water passes through its mouth, over its gills, around its body, and occasionally straight into its face at considerable speed. A fish running out of water seems about as likely as a cloud running out of sky. But being surrounded by something does not necessarily mean you can use it. A person stranded at sea is surrounded by more water than they could drink in several lifetimes, yet drinking it would only make the problem worse. So perhaps the fish has a problem after all. And strangely, the answer depends on where the fish lives, what kind of fish it is, and what we actually mean by the word thirsty. Because fish definitely drink, but that does not necessarily mean they feel thirst. To understand why, we first need to put a fish somewhere it absolutely does not belong. On a kitchen counter. Not for long. Jeez, calm down. This is a thought experiment. Please return the imaginary fish to the imaginary water. Once it is out of the water, the problem is obvious. Its body begins losing moisture to the air. Given enough time, it becomes dehydrated. Put the fish back underwater, however, and the situation becomes much stranger. Water can still move into or out of its body. It doesn't need to be swallowed first. It can cross parts of the fish's body, especially the thin surfaces of the gills, through a process called osmosis. Osmosis is water moving across a barrier toward the side with more dissolved material in it. Imagine two areas separated by a very selective screen. One contains fairly plain water. The other is crowded with salts, sugars, proteins, and other dissolved particles. Water tends to move toward the crowded side. A fish's body fluids contain salts and other dissolved substances. The water around the fish does too, but not always in the same amounts. That difference creates a constant, invisible tug of war. And freshwater fish are losing that tug of war in a very unexpected direction. Freshwater contains far less dissolved salt than the fluids inside a fish. That means water naturally moves into a freshwater fish through its gills and other permeable surfaces. The fish does not need to drink very much. It is already absorbing water simply by existing. A freshwater fish is not wandering around a lake desperately searching for something to drink. It is closer to a person standing beneath a sprinkler that cannot be turned off. Its problem is not getting enough water. Its problem is getting rid of it. Freshwater fish produce large amounts of very dilute urine, allowing them to remove excess water without losing too many valuable salts. At the same time, specialized cells in their gills pull ions such as sodium and chloride from the surrounding water. So the fish is performing two jobs at once, throwing water out, pulling salt in. This is called osmoregulation, keeping water and dissolved substances inside the body within a safe range. Without it, the fish's cells would stop functioning properly. Yep, freshwater fish live in a world that is constantly trying to drown it. But move into the ocean and the entire problem reverses. Seawater contains far more dissolved salt than the body fluids of most marine bony fish. Now, the water inside the fish tends to move outward. It escapes across the gills into the surrounding sea. The fish is immersed in water while continually losing water, which is a particularly unfair arrangement. To replace that loss, many saltwater fish swallow seawater. Some do it regularly, others drink almost continuously. The water enters the digestive system, where much of it is absorbed through the intestine. Unfortunately, the fish has now swallowed a large quantity of salt along with it, so it must separate the useful water from the unwanted salt. Specialized cells in the gills pump excess sodium and chloride back into the ocean. Other salts are removed through the kidneys and digestive system. Marine fish also produce relatively small amounts of urine, helping them conserve as much water as possible. So freshwater fish drink very little and urinate frequently. Saltwater fish drink frequently and urinate sparingly. The same basic animal, placed in two different environments, receives completely opposite instructions. One is trying not to drown internally. The other is trying not to dry out underwater. This gives us the tempting answer. Saltwater fish must get thirsty because they drink water to replace what they lose. But this is where the question develops a loose floorboard. Drinking and thirst are not necessarily the same thing. Thirst, as humans experience it, is a conscious sensation. Your body detects that its fluids are becoming too concentrated or that its blood volume is falling. Signals reach the brain. You experience an unpleasant desire to find and consume water. This creates a sequence of behaviors. You notice the feeling, you look for water, you pick up a container, you drink. Probably after ignoring the feeling for 3 hours because you're busy doing something less important. An aquatic fish does not need most of that sequence. Water is already entering its mouth whenever it moves water across its gills. It does not need to locate a river, recognize a cup, or approach the office water cooler. It only needs to swallow. In many fully aquatic fish, drinking appears to be controlled largely by reflexes, nerves, and hormones, rather than by the kind of conscious water-seeking experience we call thirst. The fish's body detects a water imbalance. Its nervous system changes how much it swallows. The fish continues being a fish. No tiny thought bubble appears above its head containing a glass of lemonade. At least, none that science has detected. And that distinction matters, because we cannot simply ask a fish how it feels. Scientists can measure how much water it swallows. They can change the salinity of its environment, examine hormones, and observe its behavior. But a subjective sensation is much harder to prove. A fish may experience some internal state connected to dehydration. That state may be unpleasant. It may even share evolutionary roots with thirst in land animals. But saying that a fish drinks is much easier than saying that it feels thirsty. Then we meet the mudskipper. Mudskippers are fish that spend large amounts of time out of water. They move across wet mud, breathe partly through their skin and mouth lining, and behave as though ordinary fish rules were merely suggestions. For an aquatic fish, water is always available to swallow. For a mudskipper sitting on land, it is not. Researchers have found evidence that when a mudskipper's mouth begins to dry, it becomes motivated to return to water. Once there, it drinks. That looks much more like recognizable thirst. There is an internal problem, followed by water-seeking behavior, followed by drinking. The mudskipper has crossed an important line. The moment a fish begins spending time on land, simply swallowing whatever happens to be in its mouth is no longer enough. It must find water. That may have required the evolution of a more familiar thirst system, or perhaps the modification of mechanisms fish already possessed. Either way, the mudskipper suggests that thirst is not just about needing water. It is also about whether the animal must go somewhere to get it. There are still exceptions. Sharks and rays handle ocean water differently from most marine bony fish. Instead of allowing their body fluids to remain much less concentrated than seawater, they retain substances, including urea. This brings the concentration inside their bodies closer to that of the ocean. As a result, they do not lose water in quite the same relentless way. They still regulate salt carefully, but they use a different solution. So, asking whether fish get thirsty is a little like asking whether vehicles need gasoline. Some do. Some use electricity. Some are bicycles. And one is probably a mudskipper wearing damp shoes. So, do fish ever get thirsty? Freshwater fish generally do not need to drink much because water continually enters their bodies. Their main challenge is removing the excess. Most saltwater bony fish do drink because they continually lose water to the sea. But that drinking may be driven largely by automatic physiological mechanisms rather than a conscious sensation identical to human thirst.
And amphibious fish, such as mudskippers, show something closer to thirst as we recognize it, detecting a shortage, seeking water, and then drinking. The most honest answer is not a simple yes or no. Fish can become dehydrated. Fish can respond by drinking. Some fish can apparently seek water when they need it. But we cannot know exactly what that need feels like inside a fish's mind. A fish may never stare into the middle distance and think, I could really use a drink. Its body, however, is constantly measuring water, moving salt, adjusting urine, operating pumps, and correcting tiny imbalances before they become fatal. So fish are not protected from dehydration by living underwater.
They are surrounded by water, trapped in a lifelong chemical negotiation with it, and equipped with an astonishing collection of biological machinery to keep exactly the right amount inside. For a fish, water is not just where it lives. Water is the problem it spends its entire life solving. If you have a question you just have to have answered, drop it in the comments. And if you liked this video, I would take bets you'd like our last video, Why Square Animals Don't Exist. Check it out.